3 months ago, I was watching chess on Twitch, and I discovered that one of the top 50 strongest chess players on the planet was discussing the Beaver Gambit. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is actually one of the openings that I've helped to make very popular, and one that I've always thought has never gotten the attention that it deserves. Of all the gambits I've ever made videos on, the one gambit that I think actually has a lot of potential, and a lot of people actually do fall for some basic traps in the opening, is the Beaver Gambit. But, to my dismay, the streamer in question here was actually saying how bad the opening was. So I did what I knew I had to do. I decided to send a challenge to the St. Louis Chess Club account, and I was fully prepared to play a Beaver Gambit match against Illia Nyzhnyk. Now, for those of you that don't actually know who this is, we are discussing a person named Illia Nyzhnyk. He is on the list of strongest players in the world, number 49. So one of the best chess players on the planet, 2687 rated. And I was ready to play a match, but unfortunately for me, we never got paired because he was playing in a tournament. So I did the next most logical thing. I entered the tournament he was playing in. I kept winning matches really quickly against the lower rated players. I got my score in the tournament close to his, but I was never able to get a match. So the only thing I had left to possibly do was to storm the stream where he was actually streaming from and confront him myself.
Okay. I come on the stream. You're in here talking about how the Beaver Gambit is so bad. That's the first thing I hear. You're clearly not a believer in the Beaver.
I'm not.
And I'm here to change your mind.
Okay, sure. You want to beat me?
I challenge you to one game.
But okay, totally gonna prove the point by playing one game.
Yes.
But I wasn't just going to storm the studio and force him to play with me. I was going to put it all on the line. I told him that if he could possibly beat me, I would never make a video on the Beaver Gambit ever again. But if I were to possibly beat him, he would have to admit that he is a believer in the Beaver.
We'll up the stakes too. How about this? I tell you what, you're not a believer. You beat me. I never make a YouTube video about the Beaver ever again.
What do you mean? That's good content. What are you talking about?
I throw away my best content?
What the heck? Yeah,
that's how confident I am.
So that's where we are, and now I'm going to analyze this game that I played against Illia, and you're going to see if I'm ever going to make a Beaver Gambit video ever again. And I also just want to say that this will be posted. The full-length video will be on the St. Louis Chess Club channel. If you do want to listen to it, we also talk a lot about this opening, but also kind of in general, it's me basically saying, hey, look at this opening where 70% of the time you just win like immediately in the opening. And he's like, yeah, but I'm almost 2,700. This is dumb. And you get kind of this interesting dialogue that the two of us had. It's not really a debate. It's kind of like we were discussing different openings and is this a good idea? Is that a bad idea? It was kind of a cool discussion. If you want that, go check out the links to the St. Louis Chess Club. But here was the game that we played. I played e4, c5, and he was forced to enter into the Beaver Gambit. And let's see what happened. I played knight to f3. He plays e6, and the gambit occurs after the delayed Alapin with pawn to c3, knight to f6, e5, attacking the knight, knight goes to d5, and here it is, b for the Beaver Gambit. Now, I have an entire playlist on this opening, so I'm not going to go too deep into the theory on this one. This is actually my 5th video on this gambit that's never really caught on for whatever reason. Maybe it's just not in most people's repertoire. Maybe it's not easy for people to add, but if you want some more information on the actual theory of this opening, that will be available to you. I will just say that the main thing that people actually mess up when you do face opponents that for the first time and they've never seen this, a lot of players will take, which is very logical. You play c4, kicking the knight away, and now black must make a serious decision. And as you can kind of see based on the Lee chess database, most players will play knight to b6, which actually turns out to be a pretty poor square for the knight. Another group of people will play knight to c7, which is actually probably the strongest move for black. And then Illia in our game just played knight to e7, which at least temporarily gets in the way of the bishop, so does give white a good chance to potentially get a small advantage in the opening. Now, I just want to reinforce the one trap, if you can call it a trap. It's more like this is a position where black just messes up on accident, is that after d4, you can realize why the knight is in such a poor place after either of the two most popular moves. d6 is played 37.3% of the time. d5 is played 29.9% of the time. Either way, whatever move that the opponent plays, you just want to take this pawn, and all of a sudden, black has a major problem. They are not able to take this because you can play pawn to c5, forking and winning some material. And for whatever whatever reason, when you play this opening, this occurs quite frequently, and you can get quite a lot of wins just because unprepared opponents will fall right in for this. But in this game, my opponent played knight to e7. I continued with d4, and he played d6. And now we got to an interesting position where, from his point of view, there's actually a very easy and obvious move that white should play, and I was trying to set up all sorts of tricks and traps, so I played bishop to d3. Now, he kind of pointed out immediately, you should just be taking this, and this is just going to be a better pawn structure for white. Like, after this recapture, the computer gives some long line and says that white is better, because after all, it's just I have the better structure. So the computer goes on and gives some sort of line where we develop our pieces, and I keep control on the e file, and something like this should be very pleasant for white to play. I, however, was trying to play for tricks, and I know that a lot of the times in these sorts of positions, you can get a very complicated, even if dubious, position after playing bishop to d3, with the point that if black takes, which is actually the best way to continue, you can play knight takes e5. And this is not the best way for white to continue, but I was just hoping for an insanely messy position if black decides to take on d4, which at least immediately looks like you've forked all my stuff and I'm in a lot of trouble, which might be true. But I was going to play knight takes f7. And this is just the kind of insanity that I'm looking for. I'm just trying to mix it up and get something wild, with the point that if you take my knight, I will be playing here. And then I'm going to win your queen, and this will be very good for me. And the other point is, if you take here, I can either take this rook or potentially make the game very messy after knight to d6 and just being down an entire rook, but forcing this king to make a decision on how you want to walk in to the d file. And something like this could get really messy, could get really fun. I always have the option of going back and taking the rook now that I've misplaced the king, and if the king ever walks over here, maybe I got some bishop f4, and I don't know what's going on, and it might not be good for me, but this is just the kind of tricky stuff that I'm hoping to get out of the opening. So that's why I didn't take on d6 in this position. And instead of taking right away, Ilya just brought out his knight. He played knight to c6, and now I really should take this. There's no excuse for not taking it at this moment, but I got castled. He played here. I'm going to hide this in the database. Also, I've just noticed, I've had this position more than once. I can't believe I've had this position before. Now, I take back here, and he plays knight to g6. And all of a sudden, his position actually makes complete sense. Like, I kind of missed an opportunity to take on d6 earlier and get some sort of very small positional advantage out of the opening. But I played queen to e2, and here, there's going to be a lot of mistakes in this game by both sides. And it was also one of those things where when you're sitting next to somebody and you're kind of trash talking and you're making some jokes and whatever, it's not going to be the highest quality game of all time, but I definitely had a lot of chances in this game. And here, there is actually a little tactic that black could have employed, but instead, Ilya went for knight to d4, which is not such a good move. Instead, he could have actually just taken this pawn, and it turns out that if I am to take twice on e5, the problem is for me here, maybe I can just move my bishop, but if I take twice, I'm going to get a position like this where black has just won another pawn and might even be ready to get himself castled here very shortly. But instead of that, he played here. I'm delighted to see it. I take here, he takes back. I play bishop to b2, so I'm defending my rook, extra support on this pawn, and I actually should be doing pretty well. I feel like for the pawn at this moment, I should be doing well. But I need to come up with a plan, because here, black, if allowed, would just play like this and get castled, or potentially play like this and castle that way, but I'd assume that would be a little bit more risky. I'd have a lot more chances to open up the queen side than the king side, at least in the immediate future. But I played knight to d2, and my plan is to play knight to e4. And I probably expected that he would just play some move like bishop to e7. I would play here, gaining some time on the queen would go somewhere, and I would be able to play knight to d6. And I issue this check before black has the time to castle. And maybe something like this would happen, where all of a sudden I'm attacking this g-pawn, which I might take right away. I might bring one of my rooks to the d-file first. I could kind of figure that out when we get there. But after this position we got here, I had just gone here threatening to go to e4. He instead plays bishop to d7. And now after knight to e4, the queen goes away. And I don't yet want to put my knight on d6 because I want to make sure that this bishop moves once, and only then will I give this check to be a little bit more disruptive. So maybe I get a little bit of time to come up with something. And I came up with a very clever idea. Now, the idea turns out to be a little bit dubious, but it's also what gives me a winning position in just a moment. And I played the move, pawn to c5. I'm anticipating that black is perhaps thinking about castling on the queen side, or at some point he's going to need to play bishop to e7 and try to castle the other way. And in either case, I'm playing pawn to c5, which is temporarily attacked twice and only defended one time. But I'm trying to get knight to d6 to be an even stronger move. And I thought, if you take this pawn, which he did, I will be able to pin you on the c-file, and I should have a crushing position. And all of that is true, but I got a little confused and kind of missed a very golden opportunity. Now, I'm just attacking the bishop, so he's got to protect it. He plays pawn to b6. This is very well understood. And he calculated from here, like when he took this pawn, he already knew the next several moves that I was going to play. And I guess we both envisioned the exact same thing. And I played in this position, knight to d6. This is totally fine. I'm giving a check. The king has to move away. But here is where I actually make a mistake. I have a very good way to just press and make my advantage even stronger in this position. But I went for this tactical move, which actually doesn't work. And I attacked a rook. I threatened checkmate. So now I'm very excited until he played bishop to c6, defending his rook, attacking my queen, and defending the f7 square. He had this move all anticipated, and he saw all of this, and I saw all of this when, except for up until this point, I didn't see bishop to c6 when I went in for all this, but he did. We both thought that this was what was going to happen, but it turns out I can get a very strong position here. And just by following very basic advice that you would give to any beginner, I think, when you would teach them how to play chess, how do you improve in the middle game? Well, one of the things is when you have a pin, you should attack the pinned piece. So it turns out if I just play bishop to d4, I'm going to be doing very well. My next move might be queen to e3. At some point, I'm going to be able to take on c5, and then my rooks will be able to come in and get very active. And if I'm able to win just one pawn back, but the king is on f8 and black has a little bit of a hard time developing, I might be able to crash through and get a very strong initiative already. But I mess up a little bit. I play queen to f3 thinking I'm very clever. He shuts me down with bishop to c6, and now I gotta move my queen again, so I put the queen on g3. Now, he's still 2 pawns up, still very dangerous. I might still be able to come up with something here. I'm not too worried just yet. He plays rook to d8, and I throw my h-pawn at him. I'm just gonna chuck the h-pawn, h4, h5. Let's kick that knight away, and let's see if we can get to work here on the king side. Now, he plays bishop takes first, which is another way, so he actually wins another pawn. I take, he takes back. He is 3 pawns up. Now, that's not optimal for me, but I still feel like I have some chances here. Like, okay, you're probably just going to play well because you're almost 2,700, but I'm not giving up hope just yet. Anything can happen when the king's on f8. I play queen to g5. I don't want to trade the queens, obviously. And my point is, if you take my bishop, then you would also be undefending your bishop. So I would be able to take on c6. He plays h6. He attacks my queen. I pop back. He plays h5. I pop back in. Okay, he's just kind of kicking me around. And now he does decide to take. If black doesn't take in this moment, I'm going to be smashing on g6. This is something black can't allow. So black now trades the bishops and plays rook to h6, which is a very interesting move. His idea is he's going to run the king over here to g7. And if he can ever resolve the pin that's going on this g7 pawn, and he's ever able to move his knight away, well, maybe the rook can come to g6, or maybe even to f6, and maybe it'll be black that gets some attack against me kind of out of nowhere. So I played rook to c7. I'm getting my rook onto a very active rank. He plays king to g8. He's following through with his plan. I snag a pawn. He plays rook to d5. And here, unbeknownst to me, I am now super winning against a top 50 player in the world. This is absolutely incredible. He has just left the back rank, which leaves him susceptible to all sorts of tactics. And this is my chance to be an absolute hero, to defeat the world's 49th best player with the Beaver Gambit. But I stumble and I don't find it, and I don't play the best move. I play queen to c1, hoping that I can come in either here, or maybe I can get some pressure going. I can get both of my heavy pieces on the back rank. Okay, maybe this will be good for me. But can you spot the amazing tactic? And it's really brilliant. This would have felt good. If I hit him with this tactic, I'd be running around the town. I'd be so excited. I'd be pogging out of my mind. But I couldn't find it. I couldn't get it done. But it turns out that leaving the back rank is a huge mistake for black, because now I have this move, rook to a8, and you're not going to be able to go back, or I'm just going to be taking this, and I'm winning the queen, and this is all going to be great for me. So you're going to want to play king to h7, and okay, I can get this far and see this position, but now do you see the follow-up? I actually have it's like mate in 3 here already. I'm just winning on the spot. I have this fantastic move, reminiscent of one of the moves Magnus has played in a world championship against Karyakin. This is the move, rook to h8, and after this recapture, because you still can't take with a knight, otherwise there's this checkmate. So after this recapture, I now get to exploit the pin. I can take on h6, and wherever your king goes, deliver a checkmate. So this could have been a truly fantastic win for me if I had only spotted this amazing tactical idea. But my tactics were not on point this day, and I played queen to c1. And after this, he kind of just takes over and is able to win the game. Now there's no longer this pin of the knight, so the knight will be able to move at some point. He secures the king first. I try to get my queen active. He takes here, and all of a sudden we're looking at the position, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's got 4 things coming at my poor little king. My king has no chance. He's got too many people coming to get me. I take here. The rook comes over to g6. Black is perfectly happy to defend this pawn while also making a threat on g2. And now this long-winded maneuver that he had of putting the pawn on h5, maneuvering the rook, bringing the king all the way over to h7. It all looks absolutely brilliant. I really don't have a good way to save myself. I played pawn to g3. He smashed. I can't take, or the queen's coming in, and this is going to be checkmate. It's all bad. I go here. He gives check. I get checkmated, thus ending the game, and also ending my streak of posting videos on the Beaver Gambit to this channel. So I hope you guys did enjoy the Beaver Gambit while it lasted. I will not be posting any more videos of it. Again, if you want to see the full-length video of this, check out the St. Louis Chess Club channel. There's a link in the description below, and I'll see you for the next video. Please subscribe. Bye!
If you're feeling trapped like a queen, no blunders, only sacrifice and see. Well, you may have the blues. Never be a chicken when you lose.